If you have been in school for a bit, you'll probably recognize that learning about subjects like math tend to be a little boring after a while. What are your thoughts on math?
Ooh, it's
I
toasty.
think it's great.
This is mostly because many people view the learning process as tedious and monotonous.
Yeah, I love math.
Yeah. And they would rather do the exact opposite of that. Smashing monsters with the hammer until they fall. Luckily for you, I have just a solution for you. You see, learning math doesn't have to be this grind until you understand it. Which is why I will use Monster Hunter World to explain to you how to solve problems with rational numbers, specifically decimal and rational numbers. We'll go over how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals, and solve specific problems related to them. So buckle up. It's about to be one wild ride.
Is
There he is. Get him, boys! So first off, what is a decimal? Does it require brain power that makes your head explode? Oh god,
Dude,
oh
that's
my
hard.
god, that is so much damage. Oh! It shouldn't. A decimal is basically a unit of measurement that is used to distinguish how many parts are there to a thing. In other words, it's like taking one big chocolate bar and splitting it into smaller parts for your friends. Each piece represents a certain decimal value. For example, if I have 1.5 bars of chocolate, I have one whole bar and one half bar. That's a decimal in a nutshell. Now, how does that have to deal with adding decimals? Well, let's start with a simple word problem. On Sunday, Pal looks inside his bank account and has $37.87. Oema gives him $12.43 more as a generous gift. How much money does Pal have in total? A common mistake many people have when trying to solve this problem is that they misalign the decimal value when drawing it out. So instead of this, where the decimals are not placed in a straight line, we need to make sure it's this, where the decimals are placed in a straight line. Once we draw it out, we just solve it like normal. Once we solve the problem, we place the decimal on the long line. So in the end, Pal has $50.30 in his bank account.
To the A-list and the commission.
Cheers!
For subtracting decimals, like subtracting whole numbers, we need to make sure where we subtract our numbers. Let's jump right into a word problem. Pound now has $50.30 in his bank account. Now, Magister snatches $15.34 to buy himself a brand new hat. How much does Pow have now? When we draw out the problem, making sure we align the dots in a straight line, we need to make sure that the $50.30 is on top of $15.34, just like if you were to subtract whole numbers. Now that we go ahead and subtract these values, we get $34.96 as the total Pow has now.
really successful.
Got him.
Okay, let's head back and report to the old man.
Now here comes the tricky part. For this next part, let's start with an equation. Now, if this sounds intimidating, don't worry. We'll go through it step by step. First step is to realize that 0.7 is basically the same thing as 7 divided by 10. Another way to think about it is if you have a decimal value, like 0.7, it's the same thing as 7.0, but you move the dot over to the left side. Knowing this, we can either do 5 times 0.7 like this, or we can start off with 5 times 7 divided by 10. So once we multiply 5 times 7 to get 35, we divide that by 10 to get 3.5. Big brain. Let's try a different problem. The result of 86 times 23 equals 1,978. Use this fact to solve this problem. But mostly, Master, we haven't talked about that yet. You haven't talked about any of that yet. How are we supposed to solve it now? How are we going to... Don't worry, my little one. We'll go through it together. Remember earlier that 0.7 is basically 7.0 divided by 10? Well, that's basically the same thing here. Every time we move the dot to the left, we divide by 10. We move the dot 1 spot, divide by 10. We move the dot 2 spots, divide by 100. We move the dot 3 spots, divide by 1,000. So, With that being said, let's take a look at the problem one more time. The result of 86 times 23 equals 1,978. All we have to do now is just divide 1,978 by 1,000. This gets us 1.978. Now that we have solved this problem, let's do a more tricky one. Let's multiply 0.39 and 0.089. As a simplification, let's just multiply 39 and 89, since we're a little familiar with the process already. When we multiply 39 and 89 together, we get 1,521. Now, let's take a look at these problems side by side. How do we get from 0.39 to 39? We multiply it by 100. And how do we get from 0.089 to 89? We multiply by 1,000. So, with this same logic, we have to take 1,521 and divide it by 100 and by 1,000. So, once we divide them all together, we get 0.01521. Another way to look at it is if we look back at the original equation, we can see that 0.39 is basically 39, but the dots move 2 spaces to the left. And with 0.089, it is 89, but the dot moves 3 spaces to the left. Now we add the amount of places we move the dot, 2 plus 3, and we get 5 places moved to the left for 0.01521. And there we go. That's how we multiply decimals. Bada bing, bada boom. Alright, I got him.
Let's report our findings to everyone at the resource
Took
center
way
when
too
we
long
get
to
back.
do that. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the final fight of the lesson, dividing decimals. Let's start with the problem and then work our way from there. Let's start with 7.2 divided by 0.37. Now that we know how to solve the rest of the problems, let's do this. Looking at this problem, we can move the dot around to match the values together. 7.2 can become 720 if we multiply it by 100, and 0.37 can become 37 if we multiply it by 100. So, let's go ahead and divide these numbers. Does 370 go into 7? No. Does 37 go into 72? Yes, one time. So, we'll go ahead and put that 1 down. So now this becomes 72 minus 37 and we get 35 as a remainder. What's our next step? Drag the 0 down and move on to the next digit. We move from the 10th digit to the 1st digit by dropping the 0 down. So now we get 37 divided by 350. How many times does 37 go into 350? 9 times. So we put this 9 up here. So now we have a 17 as the remainder. But wait, there's not another 0. What do we need to do? Are we done? Is there anything else we need to do? Yes, we need to add another 0. But how do we do that? By adding a dot after the 0 of the 370. Now that we do the rest of the problem, the rest of the numbers we solve are a decimal. Now let's solve it by dragging the 0. The 17 becomes 170. How many times does 37 go into 170? 4 times. Now, we could keep going dividing this out, but we'll stop at 9.4. And there we go. That's how we add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimal values. If you like this video, be sure to smash that subscribe button, leave a like, and comment on what I can do to improve for future videos. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.